Now, so in today's session, we are going to discuss about trigger bulkification, and then we'll see what exactly the trigger bulkification. So, what exactly the trigger bulkification, and how can we use this trigger bulkification in order to make the trigger should be fired only once per the multiple records processing at a time. Okay, we'll see with the practical. Now, let's see with the practical use case. Now, so now we have to understand what exactly the trigger bulkification and how can we implement the trigger bulkifications. Okay, we'll see with a practical use case. Now, let me explain. Already we know the concept of bulkifications. So what exactly the bulkification? Basically, whenever we are performing some operations on the records, then instead of processing each and every record separately by using a separate DML statement, we can able to place all the records inside a single collection, and then once all the records has been added to the collection, then finally we can perform the DML operations on collection of records at a time. Now, so now here in this case, let's see. So now here in this case, whenever we are going to be performing the operations on the records through programming, we are using the help of bulkification. But now, what is trigger bulkification? Why should we go for trigger bulkification? Now, let me explain. Now, for example, let me explain a small scenario. For example, I'm having this context. This is a trigger context. Now we have the requirement here. Whenever we are going to be inserting some records inside my account object, okay, whenever we are inserting some records inside my account object, before inserting the record in the object, we would like to check whether record contains rating field value and industry field value or not. Suppose if the record contains rating field and the industry field value, then okay, fine. Suppose if the record doesn't have any rating field value or industry field value. In that case, I would like to show the error message to the users. Now, in this case, how can we write this piece of code? How to prepare this trigger? Now, let's see with the practical use case. How to implement this scenario? Now, let me explain. Now, let's see. So now tell me how can we prepare the trigger for this use case? I want to prepare the trigger for this use case. How can we validate? Whenever we are inserting the record inside this object, then I want to make sure the record should have rating value and industry values mandatorily. Suppose if you are not passing the rating value or industry field value, then I would like to show the error message. How can we write this code? Here observe this one. The functionality is you may be inserting one record. For example, let's see. I'm trying to be inserting one record inside my object. I'm trying to insert one record inside my object. Then, whenever I'm trying to be inserting the record inside my object, my trigger will fire. It will check that record values. It will verify whether record contains rating value or not and industry value or not. If the record contains both the values, it will accept the record or else it will show the error message. Okay, fine. Suppose, for example, if I'm inserting two records inside my object, suppose if I'm inserting okay two records inside my object, now tell me how many times trigger will fire. If I'm inserting two records inside my object, how many times trigger will fire? One time or two times? How many times my trigger will fire? Now, in this case, suppose for example, if the trigger is firing for each and every record separately, then if I'm inserting two records, trigger will fire two times. Suppose if I'm inserting 100 records, then will trigger will fire 100 times. In that case, until or unless trigger is not performing the operations, I can't do any other operations inside my Salesforce arc because my Salesforce account will go into the read-only state. It can't perform any other operations. Then what can I do? In this case here, please make sure that don't fire the trigger for each and every record operation separately, even though you may be processing either one record or two records or n number of records also, your trigger should fire only once. My trigger should fire only once. It should not fire every time for the record. So now here in this case, in order to do such kind of operations, in order to implement such kind of functionalities, we are using the help of trigger bulkification. That means whenever we are processing the records inside my object, my trigger should not fire for each record separately. My trigger should fire only once. Even though that may be one record or 10 records or 100 or 1000 or 1 lakh, whatever it might be, my trigger should fire only once. So for the bulk records inside the object, I want to fire the trigger only once. For the bulk records also, I want to fire the trigger only once. So that here, in order to fire the trigger only once for the bulk records as well, we are using the help of trigger bulkification. Then how can we implement the trigger bulkification? Now let's see. In this case here also, whatever the records you are trying to insert, those records will be placing inside the trigger.new context variable. Trigger.new is what? It's a context variable. What is of context variable? List collection. What exactly this list collection? List of account. Why account? Because the object is account object, the trigger is on account object. So that here it is going to firing that functionality. Now, so in this case, how can we write this piece of code? Now let me explain. Now, I'm going to be creating the trigger. How to create the trigger? Trigger some accounts a trigger on account object. When my trigger should get fired on before insertion, because we need to do the validations. So validation should be always done on before insert. Validation should be always done on before insertion, so that here the trigger should get fired on before insert event. So before inserting the record inside the object, my trigger should get fired. So now here in this case, what needs to be done? First of all, check the trigger context, whether really trigger is fired because of an insert operation or not. So you know that. For that one, we are using trigger dot is insert and trigger dot is before. We are checking the condition here whether really trigger has been fired because of an insert operation or not. So now here we are checking this condition over here. Now, for example, we have validated the condition over here. We have validated the condition. My trigger has been fired because of before insert operation. Now tell me, whenever we are trying to be inserting the record, before inserting the record, where the record values will get stored inside the context variable. So before insertion, all the record values will be storing inside a context variable that is called as the trigger.new. So trigger.new is the context variable which can hold all the records which we are trying to insert. So whatever the records we are trying to insert, all the records will be getting resides inside the trigger.new context variable. Now, in this case, trigger.new is a context variable in which all the records will be getting resides. So now trigger.new is what? List collection. List of what? Account. Why account? Because this object is account object, the records are account records. So that here, these context variable will be purely a list collection of account records. Now, let's see. In this case, trigger.new is a context variable which will hold all these records. Now tell me, can we use the trigger.new map over here? No. We can't use trigger that new map. Why? Because is records are not yet inserted. Now the context is before insert. Before inserting the record doesn't have ID. Without the ID, we can't store them in the form of map collection. So that here we are using the help of trigger.new. So trigger.new is a listed collection which holds a collection of listed records or account records which you are trying to insert. Now, this is a listed collection. List of account. LST accounts equals to trigger.new. So now here in this case, let's see. Whatever the records I'm trying to insert, those records will hold inside the trigger.new context variable. Those records I'm collecting, I'm storing into my context collection. Now, once the records are available with you, then we can start validating that. Now I'm using the for loop for each and every account record, ACC record from LST accounts. I'm going to be iterating this collection over here from starting to ending. I'm collecting each and every account record from the collection. So once the record has been getting collected, then we can able to do the validation. If SEC record dot rating value is equals to null. When you want to show the error message, if it is empty, I would like to show. Then we can specify ACC record dot rating equals to empty. That means if the account record, the current account records rating value is equals to null or empty, then I would like to show the error message. Write the code to send the email alert. Else if, second one, or else we can specify that else if condition. Else if SEC record dot industry is equals to null or ACC record dot industry is equals to empty. That means if the records industry value also empty, then in this case I would like to show the error message. So write the code to send the email also to send the sorry these to validate the data to show the error message. Now here also I would like to show the error message. Show the error message. Because here our requirement is what we want to make sure account records rating should be have some value and then industry also should have some value. It should not be empty, it should not be null. So now here for that reason here, whenever we are going to validating the data, always we need to verify that if the records rating value is equals to null or empty, I would like to show the error message. Now, so in this case, how can we do this? How to implement this functionality? Now let me show you with the practical use case. Now, so in this case, now tell me, do we have any chance to optimize the code in between this one? Do we have any chance to optimize this code? I want to reduce the number of lines of code. Do we have any chance? If yes, how? Now, let's see. Anything to optimize? Now, tell me here in this case. This is a trigger.new. Trigger.new is a context variable which is of type list I'm storing into my separate collection. Now this collection I'm using over here inside my for loop. Now tell me in this case, instead of using this holistic collection, can I use the trigger.new directly over here? Yes, because a trigger.new is a name that has been given by Salesforce for the collection. Now, now, let's see. So now in this case, what I want to do is, I don't want to use this separate collection. I want to place this trigger.new here itself. So if I'm using this trigger.new inside my for loop, then we no need to write this piece of code over here. So we no need to use that realistic collection separately. So no need of using that memory. We no need to waste the memory also. We no need to waste the memory. That facility is available. So that here we can utilize that. So that I'm avoiding this place. So directly we can able to have this piece of code, and then whenever we are trying to be inserting the record, before insertion of the record we can able to collect that newly inserting records from trigger that new context variable. We can collect every record, we can validate the data as well. That facility is available here. Okay, this is how we can able to use trigger context. Okay, trigger bulkification. Let me give the note point here. While implementing the trigger, while implementing the trigger, to perform the operations on the object records, we have to make sure the trigger should get fired only once for all the records, only once for multiple records at a time, so that we can improve the application performance. So that we can improve the application performance. So trigger bulkification should be implemented with the help of trigger context variables and iterative statements. Iterative statements. Now, this is the functionality of trigger bulkification here. Then how can we implement the triggers by using this functionality? We'll see in next session. Because in today's session here, we are facing some network issues over here. Since evening, I don't have the internet access, but just now I'm connecting through dongle. This is also giving some issue now. So that here we'll be continuing the sessions on Saturday. Saturday we'll be having the session. Tomorrow and day after tomorrow, we don't have the session. Next session will be on Saturday evening at 5 o'clock. So that we'll be having the functionality. We'll discuss these features. Okay. Now, Thank you all. Thanks for your time. So tomorrow and day after tomorrow we don't have the session. Next session will be on Saturday evening at 5 o'clock.
Thank you, sir.
You so